The quiet in our house was a physical thing. It pressed down on me, a heavy, suffocating blanket. 3 times I had carried a life. 3 times that life had slipped away, a whisper of what could have been. The first time was a tragedy. The second, a cruel joke. The third, it was a sentence, a curse. The doctors had their clinical words, their sterile explanations that meant nothing and offered less comfort. They spoke of statistics and bad luck, but I knew. I felt it in my bones, a cold certainty that settled deep in my marrow. Something was fundamentally wrong with me. I was broken, tainted, cursed. His parents made it worse. David's parents. They were people of severe faith, their world a stark landscape of saints and sinners, blessings and punishments. They never said the word cursed aloud. They didn't have to. They spoke of atonement and prayer. They looked at me with a pity so sharp it felt like accusation. Their eyes would scan our empty rooms, lingering on the space where a crib should have been. In their quiet, judging gazes, I saw my own failure reflected back 100 times. I was the barren field, the blighted tree, the woman God had turned his back on. Their silent condemnation was a constant low hum beneath the roar of my own grief. So I retreated. The world outside became too sharp, too loud, too full of life. It was an insult. Mothers pushed strollers down the street, their laughter like shards of glass. Children's shrieks from the park were a physical pain. I drew the curtains and let the dust settle. For months, my world shrank to the 4 walls of our bedroom. I became a ghost in my own home, haunting the hallways, my only company the phantom kicks and imagined heartbeats of the children I would never hold. David tried. He brought me food I wouldn't eat and spoke words I couldn't hear. He was a good man. Or so I thought. The house became a mausoleum for our unborn children. I kept the door to the spare room closed. The room we had painted a hopeful, sunny yellow. It was a tomb now. I couldn't bear to look at it. My grief was a monstrous living thing, and I fed it with my isolation. I watched the seasons change through a sliver of light in the curtains, a prisoner of my own sorrow. David would come home from work and find me in the same spot on the sofa, wrapped in the same blanket. He would try to hold me, but I was unreachable, lost in a fog so thick that even love couldn't penetrate its suffocating depths. I was convinced this was my life now. This was my punishment. One Saturday, David declared the haunting was over. He pulled open the curtains, letting the aggressive sunlight flood the room. He said we were going out, just for a few hours, to the pier. He put on our song, that old indie ballad we fell in love to, its gentle melody a stark contrast to the jagged edges of my heart. I didn't want to go. The idea of facing the world felt like a betrayal of my grief, a grief that had become my entire identity. But the look on his face, a desperate, pleading hope, was something I couldn't refuse. For him, I would try. For him, I would pretend to be alive for an afternoon. The pier was a sensory assault, the smell of salt and fried dough, the cacophony of seagulls and arcade games, the bright spinning lights of the Ferris wheel. It was all too much. I felt detached, watching a movie of other people's happiness. David held my hand tight, a solid anchor in the swirling chaos. He bought me cotton candy that I didn't eat and won me a stuffed animal I didn't want. He was trying so hard to rebuild the woman he had married, brick by painful brick. I smiled, a brittle, hollow thing. I let him lead me through the crowd, a doll being pulled along on a string. Then he saw the caricature artist, a strange, gaunt man with eyes that seemed to see more than the lines of a face. David thought it would be funny, a goofy, distorted memory of the day we tried to be normal again. So we sat. The artist didn't speak. He just stared at us, his charcoal stick scratching against the paper with an unnerving speed. The crowd faded away, the sounds of the pier muffled. It felt like a confession. His eyes bore into me, then into David. A flicker of something, a dark recognition, passed over the artist's face as he looked at my husband. It was gone as quickly as it came. He finished with a flourish and turned the easel around. My breath caught in my throat. It was us, our faces twisted into cartoonish smiles. But we weren't alone. Floating around our heads like faint, chalky halos were 6 small, ghostly children. They were sketched in faint, ethereal lines, almost invisible. 3 on my side, 3 on his. The artist simply said, "A family portrait." David laughed it off, a nervous, high-pitched sound. He paid the man and hurried me away. But I couldn't stop staring at the drawing. It wasn't the ghostly children that chilled me, it was something else. One of the little ghost boys was wearing a tiny baseball cap, a very specific one. The baseball cap. It was a faded red with a specific, slightly crooked logo for a local team that had disbanded 20 years ago. I knew that cap. I had seen it before. But where? The image snagged in my mind, a loose thread I couldn't stop pulling. Back home, the eerie drawing sat on the coffee table, a silent accusation. The children. Our 3 lost pregnancies. But who were the other 3? The thought was a cold stone in my stomach. I looked at David, really looked at him, and saw the sweat beading on his upper lip. He avoided my eyes. He was just a man trying to cheer up his wife, wasn't he? The memory hit me like a physical blow. The cap. I had seen it in a box of old things David had brought from his parents' house years ago. Things he was supposed to sort through but never did. He'd shoved it all in the attic. Childhood junk, he'd called it. I had to see it again. I had to know. While David was in the shower, the water drumming a frantic beat against the porcelain, I pulled down the attic ladder. The air was thick with the smell of dust and forgotten time. I found the box easily. It was a cardboard box, sealed with yellowed tape. But next to it, tucked away under a loose floorboard, was something else. A small, wooden trunk. One I had never seen before. My hands trembled as I pried open the rusted latch. The smell that hit me was not dust. It was mothballs and something else. Something faintly sweet and wrong. Inside, my blood ran cold. It was filled with children's clothes, not baby clothes. Clothes for toddlers, for small children, a little girl's dress with a faded floral print, a boy's tiny pair of denim overalls. And there, right on top, was the faded red baseball cap from the drawing. It was real. This was all real. My mind reeled, trying to make sense of the impossible. Who did these belong to? Why were they hidden? Why did David lie? Beneath the clothes, my fingers brushed against something hard and metallic. I pulled it out. It was an old flip phone, the kind from before smartphones, a relic from a different era. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. With a sickening sense of dread, I found the charger in the trunk with it, plugged it in, and waited. The screen flickered to life. The battery was almost dead, but it worked. I navigated to the photo gallery. The images that loaded onto the small, pixelated screen were grainy, dark, and horrifying. They were photos of children, sleeping children, but they didn't look like they were sleeping peacefully. They looked gone. And in the corner of one photo, a selfie, was the face of a teenage boy. It was David. The world tilted on its axis. The floor beneath me felt like it was dissolving into sand. That face. It was David, but younger, colder. The boy in the photos was not the man I married. He was a stranger, a monster wearing my husband's skin. The pictures were a nightmare gallery of his secret past. 6 children, the clothes in the trunk, the 3 ghost children on his side of the drawing. It all clicked into place with a horrifying, deafening snap. My miscarriages weren't a curse from God. They were an echo, a biological rejection of a man whose DNA was steeped in something unforgivable. My body knew. My body had been trying to protect me. I stumbled down from the attic, the flip phone clutched in my hand like a venomous snake. The house was silent again, but this was a new kind of quiet, a sharp, terrifying silence. David was gone. His car was missing from the driveway. On the kitchen counter, where I'd left the cursed drawing, was a note. His familiar handwriting was a scrawl, hurried and panicked. "I'm sorry," it read. "I never wanted you to know. I thought I could be good with you." Beneath the apology, he had written out the lyrics to our song. Our song. The melody that had once been my comfort was now the soundtrack to my life's greatest horror. He had tainted everything. The man I loved did not exist. He was a character David had played, a carefully constructed fiction to hide the hollow, rotten core of who he truly was. His parents, with their talk of atonement, were they talking about me or about him? Had they known all along? The betrayal was a physical agony, a knife twisting in a wound that would never heal. All my grief, all my self-loathing, all the months I'd spent believing I was broken and cursed, it was all a lie. I wasn't cursed. I was haunted. Haunted by the ghosts of his past. Ghosts I never even knew existed until they appeared in charcoal on a boardwalk pier. I was not the broken one. He was. The quiet of the house no longer felt like my grief. It felt like his absence. It felt like truth. The pain was immense, a vast empty ocean, but for the first time in a very long time I felt something other than sorrow. It was a cold, hard clarity. The curse was lifted because there never was one. There was only a man with an awful secret and a woman who had finally, devastatingly discovered it. The road ahead was unknown, a landscape of ruins, but it was my road, and I would walk it alone, free from him, free from the ghosts,